I remember during the whole period when they're faking out Khan to like lower their shields so they can photon torpedo them, and then Kirk is like, okay, we're sending over the blah 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 now, and he plays it totally straight. I remember in the director's commentary, Nick Meyer was like, I had to tell Shatner over and over, don't say like it's coming now or anything like that. Just play it straight. But Khan is what he let him go full throttle on.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. If you're going to let him go buck wild on one thing, that's the thing to go on.
Agreed.
What else would you do in that moment, though? Would you be like, oh, Khan? You know?
Right?
Shucks.
Khan.
Khan, you left the fridge open again.
Khan, did you forget to take the garbage out?
See, I was going to go, you didn't put the toilet seat down.
Me too. I was thinking that was the next one.
Khan, you have to put the toilet seat down in the middle of the night.
That is very important.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about movies. My name is Dave Riedel, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of BAFCA and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
And I'm Megan Kearns, editor of Bitchflix, freelance writer, and also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Hey, and this week it's more streaming stuff, although some of these are new. We're going to be talking about the true history of the Kelly Gang, which, if memory serves, has some Russell Crowe action in it. Then we're going to talk about The Whistlers, which is not about a family whose last name is just Whistler. It's about people who whistle.
Yes.
And then finally we'll be talking about Sea Fever, which every time I say Sea Fever, I also think space madness, although it's not about going mad in space.
Yes. Or on Futurama, there was ocean madness, and one character said, ocean madness is no excuse for ocean rudeness.
That is amazing.
That's really funny. But you know what I was thinking about just before we get started, Evan? You know, you've written a book. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking I should write a book, but I don't know what I should write it about. And then I thought I could write a takedown of every episode of Paw Patrol. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Listen, I don't want to take any credit, but I did suggest you should do that. That you should, do recaps and reviews of Paw Patrol a couple weeks ago.
That's right. You did you did say that. Yeah.
So I'm going to say I planted the seed, and now it's blooming.
This is like Inception. It's like I kind of forgot that you said that, but I was like, oh,
right?
Wait a minute. You planted, yeah, and now it's germinated for like 2 weeks. Yeah. See that, and that's the only time anyone ever talks about Inception. So, hey-o. I don't mind Inception so much, but, I don't need to see it again. Anyway, we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about the true history of the Kellery Gang. What's wrong with me? Let me try that again. The true history of the Kelly Gang, which, Megan, I know you're the only one who saw this, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is an Australian movie about the Kelly Gang, not starring Yahoo Serious, and because he made a movie about Reckless Kelly. I think it's called Reckless Kelly. Anyway, what is this movie about? Is it the guy from 1917 is in it, right?
Yes, George McKay.
Yeah.
Yes, so George McKay plays Ned Kelly, and Ned Kelly, if you don't know, was a thief and a bank robber and murderer in Australia in the mid to late 1800s. And this film is actually an adaptation of the novel that was written called True History of the Kelly Gang, and this is an adaptation of that.
And it's a novel. It's not a historical presentation.
No,
okay.
It is not a historical presentation at all.
Is it like the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, or is it not like that?
So I'm actually a terrible person and haven't ever seen that, so I can't actually compare.
You are not a terrible person. You are a lucky person.
Yeah, I never saw that one either. So
I mean, I like long movies where nothing happens, as we all know, but
Yeah.
man, this is a
Yes.
long movie where nothing happens. So,
Well, no, this is not a movie where nothing happens if you're comparing in that way. But if you're comparing in the sense of a fictitious retelling of what happened, then yes, there are certainly parallels in that way.
okay.
Yeah. So this film starts off, and it immediately starts off with narration. And well, actually, but even before that, we're told that this is Australia 1867, and then we see an inner title on the screen saying "Nothing you're about to see is true," and then that disappears, and only "true" is left on the screen, and then it is the title card. And I mention that because this film hammers home the message of truth and lies and what is truth, and you writing your own story and you rewriting your own history and you writing your history throughout the goddamn film. Like the whole entire film is hammering that home.
That sounds tedious.
And yeah,
so it's subtle.
At first yeah, very subtle.
Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
you get like the gold star.
Yeah. So, but the thing of it is it doesn't, like, when you're watching it from the start, it doesn't feel tedious. I mean, I'm not a fan of narration as a general rule, but I'm like, okay, I'll hold off and I'll see where this is going. But yeah, it's just, it starts off with this very long narration, and it's an adult Ned Kelly who is narrating this, and he says, "My dear child." So he's clearly writing this to a child, and you find out by the end of the film that he's writing this to his unborn child, and that's the framing device in the novel as well, is that he's writing this to his child, and which if I remember correctly, he didn't have a child, or there was no proof he had a child, but he certainly could have potentially had a child. So anyway, so they're hammering this home, and obviously the whole fact that and he's talking about, like, if my story is a lie, may I burn in hell if I speak false. But the thing of it is that we're told that none of this is true right from the outset, and he's saying it's not a lie, secret shackle, I was raised on lies, so I'm not going to lie. So clearly he's an unreliable narrator right from the start. So, which, is not the most subtle way to depict that, but is a potentially interesting way to depict it. And the best part of the film is actually the beginning part, because when he's a 12-year-old boy, and the kid who plays him is so good. And I don't want to say so good for a child actor. He's just so good. And he's holding his own against Charlie Hunnam. He's holding his own against Russell Crowe. He's holding his own against Essie Davis, who plays his mother in this. And Essie Davis is fucking amazing. I love Essie. I want to see her in everything. And she is outstanding in this as Ned Kelly's mother. And the very first thing we see after the narration, and we see him writing a letter, actually, maybe I don't even see him writing a letter. Anyway, I digress. You do eventually see him writing a letter. But one of the first scenes we see is this 12-year-old kid watching Charlie Hunnam getting a blowjob. And you find out it's from his mother. And because she's a sex worker. Yeah. Yeah, and it's very
You woke
graphic.
me up.
You're like, I was gonna snooze through this segment, but now, woohoo, I'm perked up.
I was gonna break in when you said the kid playing young Ned Kelly holds his own against Charlie Hunnam, and I was going to say, who doesn't hold his own against Charlie Hunnam? But
well, wait, but he's really good in The Gentleman. I'll just say
he is very good in The Gentleman. I will give him that. That's his
he's
one
got his
good moment.
Fair enough. He milked that moment for everything it was worth. But yeah, but this is a really graphic scene. And I don't mean graphic like nudity, because there is no nudity. You don't see anything. But it's like he's very viscerally having an orgasm. And it's just, there's something with the juxtaposition of this 12-year-old kid watching this. It's just so disturbing. And like Charlie Hunnam is like looking at like the kid, and it's just, it's just repulsive. And just wrong. But you learn that his mother will kind of she's ruthless and cutthroat, and she'll do anything in her mind to protect her kids and to feed them. And they live in this basically this shack kind of in the middle of nowhere with all these dead trees all around. And so they have horses, and I think they're trying to be farmers or something. But anyway, they're living a rough life. And Like you find out that his father is kind of an asshole, and his mother and his father argue, and the father was like supposed to bring home meat, and in one scene you see 12-year-old Ned like covered in blood, and that's like kind of a recurring theme. Like you will see him covered in blood a lot, and he like killed a cow and he butchered the cow like on his own, but that then leads, because he stole the cow, that then leads his father to be arrested and put in a cell and eventually die. So it's like it ends up being this really traumatic moment, but he was like really excited to like bring home food for his family. And then there's another scene where you see him watching this kid who falls into a river, and you don't see him help the kid, but you're told that he helps the kid. And then there's this really interesting scene after that where the mother of the kid who fell into the river, she's loaded, and she comes to Ned's house and she talks to his mother and says, I want to help send him to boarding school so he can get a great education. And Essie Davis is not having any of it. She's bullshit pissed, and she's like, you may be able to send your kid away, but I'm not going to be able to. And it's also this interesting moment where she's critiquing this woman who's British, and Ned's mother is Irish but Australian now, and she criticizes the British for stealing their culture. And she says, you bleed us out of our culture like the black fellow before. And we're getting a little colonialism commentary here, which is good. The problem with that, though, is unfortunately, as we find out later in the film, that's about it. Like Ned, as he gets older, and when he kind of becomes like zealotous, he talks about how he's been wronged of things and things have been stolen from him and he's had injustices. But really, I mean, and yes, that is true, but really it's, the indigenous people who've really been fucked over and have had to deal with appropriation and colonialism. So it feels very hollow to hear this from an angry white man. It feels, very fascist and just, anyway, but we'll get more to that. So then this happens, and she doesn't want to send him away, and his father dies. And then because she's a widow and apparently she's a hot commodity, everyone's lining up to marry her, and including Russell Crowe in a very small role. And he decides he's going to buy Ned as an indentured servant and have him come along with him so he can be his like helper. It's very weird. And and like there's this scene where there's this like stagecoach coming down the road, and at this point Ned doesn't know he's a servant yet. He just thinks he's like going along to like learn some things from Russell Crowe's character. And so Russell Crowe starts like, he's hiding in the woods, and you don't actually know where he's going. He goes off, and he's like just wait here and hold the reins of the horse. And this guy gets off the stagecoach and is like, move your horse. And then all of a sudden you see 12-year-old Ned's face covered in blood splatters, and he's just horrified at this violence and these deaths. And like Russell Crowe is like yelling at him to like do things, and he's just kind of frozen. And so one of my favorite scenes, if not my favorite scene, they're at this inn, and this is after this has happened, and he had earlier said he wanted some pancakes. So Ned has a flambe plate of pancakes, and Russell Crowe is like, oh, come on, eat your pancakes. And the kid screams, I don't want your fucking pancakes. And I don't know, like it's just so funny and great.
That is funny.
Yeah, like that's probably the best. Weirdly, that's the best scene in the film, and I enjoyed it so much. And then after that, like Charlie Hunnam is upstairs, and Charlie Hunnam's a constable, and Harry who is Russell Crowe, had sang this song earlier about Constable Cunt, and so he's clearly anti any kind of authority. And then so he has Charlie Hunnam, and then he ties up his dick, and he's like yelling at Ned to shoot his dick off, and it's like, Jesus Christ, what is happening here? So constantly throughout the movie, like you see this when he's a kid, and this is perpetuated throughout as he's an adult. People are constantly trying to get him to be violent and to enact violence, and reinforcing this toxic masculinity. And jumping ahead to when he is an adult, there's this scene where there is another constable who has just told Ned that the woman he is dating, who is living in a brothel, her baby is the father of her baby. It's going to get a little convoluted, but the father of her baby is his mother's new fiance, who's like 20 years younger than her.
Ooh.
And everybody apparently in town knew this, but Ned did not. And so Ned is like pissed. And so it looks like the constable is gonna like try to shoot somebody, and then his mother's freaking out, and so Ned like shoots his hand and then has a gun on him, and his mother is screaming at the top of her lungs, kill him, and he doesn't do it, and Ned gives the guy who's played by Nicholas Hoult his gun, and she's like, God damn it, aren't there any men of worth in this country? And it's like, of course, because her son didn't kill somebody, that, you know, he's worthless and not a, you know, real man. So that theme is just, you know, spread throughout. And so Ned, through this, it feels like he's like, you know, forced into these situations or pushed into these situations. But what's weird is halfway through the film, or a little more than halfway through the film, he finally starts to be violent on his own. Like he's attacking a group of people, and he kind of becomes unhinged, and his friend is like, whoa, dude, what are you doing? Because he saws off someone's ear to like, seems like keep it as a souvenir.
Wait a minute.
And
Is he played by Michael Madsen? What is this? Hold on.
Yeah, so it's just, yeah, it's really strange that, like, even though you'd think like, oh, halfway through the film, okay, you know, the film has built up this character, there's an arc here, you know, he can have this turn where he was this kind of, you know, thoughtful kid, you know, and he's been surrounded by violence, and everyone's like trying to incite violence in him, you know, men, you know, his mother, you know, everyone. But it still doesn't feel like it's earned. Like, it still feels weird when he becomes so unhinged. It just feels like it's quick, even though it's not necessarily quick. So that's kind of strange. And then basically after that, it's him forming the gang, and really that happens quickly too, and it's his brother and his friend and, you know, another dude. And what happens
Some other guy.
This sounds like a
some
busy
other guy who knows
movie.
Yeah, there's a lot happening. And then his mother gets arrested because she attacked the constable who's played by Nicholas Hoult, and then he decides he's going to storm the prison and he's going to raise an army and storm the prison and release his mother, rescue her. And the mother, now she's the woman who had the baby with his mother's fiance, who she got pissed off when she found that out, and Essie Davis, his mother, shot a horse. It's the most disturbing scene in the film, just warning people who are disturbed by animal brutality. But yeah, his girlfriend is now pregnant with Ned's baby, and she's trying to tell his mother, like, hey, can you write to him and like have him not do this? And his mother's like, no, he should totally do this. She's like, you'll ask yourself someday what makes you a good mother, and the only way that makes you a good mother is how far the lengths your children will go to take care of you. Like, so she's, you know, not like unhinged too in a way. And you see Ned like basically like inciting these other young men who feel disenfranchised to attack authority and to be violent and to kill and like all of these things. And it does feel like there is very much a fascist parallel happening, which could potentially be interesting. And there are definitely a lot of interesting things in the film. Like, the score is great. The visuals are great. There's some great acting here. But I'm just so goddamn tired of the romanticization of violent men, especially white men, that it just feels kind of tedious. And having the whole story, you know, and the whole theme or motif rather, hammered home that, you know, he's got to take control of his own story, and, you know, lies are terrible, and this is the truth, and this is my story, and I'm telling it the right way. And yeah, it gets a little tedious after a while. Oh, and then I should say it near the end is a shootout, which actually is kind of, the visuals are kind of interesting in a way because it's like a strobe light effect. So there's some stylized elements here throughout the film too, and that is one of them. There's like this strobe light effect that you see shadows almost like a strobe light, and then you see it's the gunfire from people who are shooting on the Kelly gang.
That's a lot of gunfire if it's causing strobe effect. Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's definitely some good things here in this film, and it was very interesting. Like, it definitely held my interest throughout. One of the things is that there's scenes that kind of remind me of The Nightingale, Jennifer Kent's brilliant and brutal film, and like there's a scene where Nicholas Hoult holds a baby and points a gun at the baby, and which very much reminded me of certain things from The Nightingale. And also, The Nightingale not only is women-centric and person of color-centric, it very much focuses on, an Aboriginal person too, and how Aboriginal people and women were both, exploited, and how they're both, fucked over by colonialism and misogyny. And I just, watching this film, it felt like, oh, I really should be watching The Nightingale. Like, so...
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good here, but for me, it was more the first half of the film that worked, because it was interesting seeing the kid, grow up in a violent environment. But anyway.
See, here's the thing about these kinds of movies, and I'm going to just lump this in with Westerns. If I'm going to watch a Western that's like mediocre with a lot of really pretty people in it, I'm just going to watch Young Guns again. So why do I need to watch the true story of the Kelly Gang?
Yeah.
Well, shall we move on to the Whistlers?
Yes, let's.
Sure.
I kind of wish that this was a movie about a family named the Whistlers and not what it was.
Yeah. I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna guess that of the three of us, that I perhaps enjoyed this the most.
Really?
You're probably
Yeah.
right.
You enjoyed it?
I did. I did enjoy it.
I mean, I know that I sounded really incredulous then, but
Like, I didn't love it. Love it. It's
Okay.
kind of a mess.
kind of a mess.
That might be an understatement.
I think the thing that's really disappointing about this is like you've got all these double crosses and triple crosses and quadruple crosses going on, and you're like, I know where this is going because I've seen this movie before. Anyway, please, Evan, regale us with why you liked it.
Well, I mean, first I'll just start with a high-level summary. I mean, this is a movie about a corrupt cop who's playing both the cops and the mob against each other to try to get 30 million euros that only one guy knows where it is.
Yeah.
So it's like a race to play the cops and the bad guys off each other, and to hopefully figure out where this money is stolen so he can run away with this woman who he falls for. So that's the high level summary. I don't know.
He does run away with her.
He does,
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
Of course, he can't speak, but it's a good thing he can whistle. Anyway.
It is a good thing he can whistle. See, I think going in, I had the expectation that this was going to be a lot tenser, like a lot more of a heisty kind of movie. And
Boy.
it really wasn't. And it is definitely it's definitely like disjointed and messy, and like it's got like the stylized title cards and like the story pieces that are out of order, and you're just like, this doesn't make sense. I don't know. I'm kind of confused, but I still liked it anyway. I don't know what it was. I think part of it was he goes to the Canary Islands to learn the secret whistling language. And I like that aspect of it, and I probably could have watched more of that.
That was clever. That was a clever idea that they unfortunately shit the bed with.
Yeah, it's like, we'll use the secret language so we can avoid, the cops knowing what we're talking about.
But it's not actually a secret language. This is the thing that the movie doesn't actually explain. Like, this is a language in Spain. Like, it's not a language a lot of people speak, because I read something like from 1950 to 1980, like it was discouraged, but like older speakers and younger speakers do speak this, so they can speak across ravines and communicate like on the island or via like, various islands. So yeah, so like I also thought like, oh, this is a secret language. Why are they concocting this secret language? I have so many questions. And then I did a modicum of research, and I was like, oh, it's actually real. Yeah, it's called like Silbo Gamero, and I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but yeah. So anyway, I wish they had delved deeper into that and talked about how this is actually a language.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that part of the movie. I, of course, enjoy any movie that involves like some person caught between two factions and playing them off each other. That is always entertaining to me. I wish it was done better.
Yeah. Well, I realized I was in trouble about 12 minutes into the movie when
I'm sorry.
when I realized that every scene, that the movie's 12 minutes long and 6 of those minutes have been people entering and leaving rooms. So this is a movie where you see everybody enter a room and everybody leave a room in every scene. It's amazing. You just want to say, look, I know that if you cut into the meat of the scene later, your movie would only be 70 minutes long. But seriously, folks, let's pick this up. Am I wrong?
You're not. That's what's funny about it.
You're not.
I wasn't thinking that heavily about that at the time, but you're not wrong. It's funny to think about how much time is wasted of people going in and out of rooms.
Yeah.
Like the whole scene where he sneaks into her room to take the keys out of the jacket and how slow and methodical he is. He walks out. You're exactly right. We see the whole thing start to finish.
Yeah, it's just, when at the end when the cop goes into the hotel and the hotel clerk who's not the hotel clerk, you see the cop go in, you see the cop go and look at the room, you see the cop go back to it's like, oh my God. I mean,
But see, I actually have to say that I think this movie did not work for me. It was for many reasons, but I will say I think the last 20 minutes are actually great. I was like, finally, this is when the film comes together and gets good. So when the hotel scene is happening and simultaneously they're in not the alley, but it's like kind of an alley, and everything's happening in various locations, that I enjoyed tremendously.
Yeah, it was still, I don't want to sound like one of those people who's like, this movie was slow, but because this movie's not slow in the sense that it's boring, although it is. But these are deliberate editing choices they made and also deliberate writing choices. And I'm not sure why anyone would make these choices because, seriously, every scene in this movie could be 20% shorter. And you could have 20% more. Even the title cards.
Oh, my God. I thought my screen had frozen.
Yeah. Here's what nobody ever thinks about. You're supposed to leave a title card up so you can read whatever is there 3 times. That's why title cards are always so short, So you can read the name Christie because his name's Christie and it's 2 syllables. You can read that like 40 times by the time his card finally gets up there. And it's this bright, white, blinding card. And like I'm in a bright room and my eyes hurt. I mean, it was unreal. So, I mean, I kept waiting. Like he's talking to his boss and he's talking to his boss and he's talking to his boss and she's, okay, she's the redhead. So I kind of like her better than everybody else anyway. So, but I'm watching it and I'm just thinking to myself, when is she going to tell him that she's on to him? Oh, here it comes. It's just like,
yeah. But he knew that she was onto him because he knew that the guy was taping him through the painting in the mirror.
Yeah. No, I know. That's like that's like in the first scene, not the first scene. That's like when he first goes home and he's like, hey, you can't I can't bring you into the building because then they'll be like, who's this woman coming in with him? She's like, oh, I'll be a hooker. Okay, fine.
No, but that's the
At least she can think on her feet.
Out of order. That's true, she can. But it's all told out of order. So that beginning scene is actually happening much later.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And also, lots of guys with beards who look exactly the same. So.
God, yes!
Yeah.
Thank you. I thought it was just me.
No, it wasn't.
And I never forget a face, and I'm really good at discerning various people's faces, even if they have similar features. And literally, it wasn't until the end, until the 2 bearded guys were sitting next to each other in the car, that I was like, holy shit, those are not the same dude. Whoops.
There was one moment that I thought was genuinely fun, even though I'm not sure it was supposed to be. And it's when the redhead police captain whistles and catches that guy, looking the wrong way. And then she just shoots him and he's like, and he just like collapses slowly.
He's like, crap.
Yeah.
Maybe we should move on to Sea Fever.
Maybe we should. Oh, the Sea Fever.
I was going to say, unless we have anything else, but it doesn't sound like we do.
No, we should move on to the Sea Fever. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Sea Fever.
Whoa, sea fever.
Did you say you loved it?
No, I think you said
Or
hello,
did you
sea
say
fever.
hello,
I
Sea
said
Are
Fever?
you
whoa,
say-
sea
Oh,
fever.
hello.
Oh. But it sounded like you were kind of singing Grease Lightning. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
it did.
You were. All right. I wasn't just
were
imagining
not
that
imagining
then.
it.
So, all right.
No.
So, Sea Fever, which is just the most Irish film you've ever seen in your life. Not really. It's not the most Irish movie I've ever seen in my life. Do you know how I know? Because I didn't have to turn on the subtitles. So,
True.
yeah. But, another movie with the redhead. And
Yes.
I knew, I didn't actually think this was going to like be a plot point, which it kind of is. But because my grandfather was a sailor, I know all about the things that are good luck and bad luck and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, when they were like, she's a redhead, I was like, well, somebody didn't do the research because only redheads who are passengers are bad luck. But, we'll let that one go.
I mean, you could argue she's a passenger. I mean, if you want to get kind of nitpicky, you could kind of say
let's get
she's
nitpicky.
a passenger. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she is but she is there to do research, to.
Yes. Yeah.
So-
I mean, I guess she's not part of the boat crew, so
Right.
in that way she's a passenger.
Right.
But yes,
She's
but
definitely
I
a
hear
visitor.
you.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
Sea Fever, who wants to dive down? Actually, this is a really easy movie to kind of summarize, really.
Yeah.
It is. Dave, take it. Take it away.
So you have this boat that goes out into the Atlantic via Ireland, and they happen upon a parasite, and the parasite does them in.
That's a great synopsis. Yes.
So there you
Yes.
go. And I was pleasantly surprised by how fucking tense parts of this movie were.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
some of it was really working for me. Like the first 45 minutes or so, when they're not quite sure what's going on, I was just like, but then when it kind of got more into standard horror tropes, and I don't really think it's a horror movie per se, because
No, it's like a thriller.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like little elements of horror, but yeah, so it's more sci-fi thriller.
yeah, it's more
but
like a
with some
sci-fi
horror,
thriller.
yeah.
But because there is body
Yeah.
horror in it,
Yes,
it does
yes.
kind
You
of
mean
Oh, is
exploding
there
eyeballs?
ever?
exploding
Yes,
eyeballs.
bleeding, exploding eyeballs.
Well,
I love it.
I love it when they go to that other boat. We'll do the plot in more detail in a moment. But when they go to the other boat and they find the crew dead below deck, and one of them's eyes are exploded out, and they're like, "Why did he stab his eyes out?" I just remember thinking, I don't think he stabbed his eyes out.
Yeah.
No.
And then
Same.
no, he didn't, because
Didn't
you
say
see what
birds
happens
could have
later.
pecked them out or something.
Yeah, I know. Birds got below deck and pecked out his eyes.
Yeah, no bird's doing that.
Yeah. So, yeah, the other thing I thought was kind of a surprising choice is they go out of their way at the beginning of the movie to what's the main character's name? I know
Siobhan.
that
Siobhan.
Siobhan, right? I was going to say Hermione because that's the actor's name, but Siobhan, they go out of their way to be like, she's kind of a loner. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She's all about the science, which actually isn't really all that necessary given what she's thrown into. She's already an outsider on this boat, and she's a scientist.
Right.
Hey, you're covered. So that opening scene, not sure why it's there. So, okay. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like you could have just literally jumped in with her stepping onto the boat.
Yeah, totally. But, I mean, that's not really a big complaint. I mean, the movie would be...
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, the movie would be, 88 minutes instead of 93 if you got rid of that scene.
Sure.
So,
Right. Yeah.
but so she goes to the boat and they call it an exclusion zone. I don't know if that's just what the Irish call it or if that's what everyone calls it, but
Or
they're
in this world, if it's like some type of area that's like, okay, that's polluted, don't go in there.
Right. So
Right.
the Coast Guard, it's a fishing vessel, and they think that they've found this catch, and then the Coast Guard's like, hey man, that's in the exclusion zone, you can't go there, and they're like, fuck, we'll go around it. But then the captain, who's a fucking asshole, decides he's going to alter the course to go into the exclusion zone to do the catching anyway, but he doesn't tell anyone, not even his wife, Connie Nielsen, doing a credible Irish accent, even though she's very Danish. And, yeah.
No, she knows. His wife Freya knows.
No, she finds out later.
Oh, that's right. That's right. My bad.
He there's like the image on the screen. She's like, whoa, did you take us into the exclusion zone?
That's right. I forgot that it had already happened. Yeah. Yes, my apologies.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
And Connie Nielsen is amazing. I love Connie Nielsen.
I like Connie Nielsen a lot too. I wouldn't say I love her, but I'm on board with Connie Nielsen. Whenever I see her, I'm like, hey, Connie Nielsen, that's you. So so they sail is not the right word because there are no masts on this boat. They steer into the exclusion zone, and they hit something which comes at them very fast on the radar, which they think is a shoal or a large school of fish. And so something hits the boat and they're stuck. They're like, fuck. And then they go down below deck and they're like, something's seeping into the fucking boat. And it's this weird green shit.
Yeah, let's poke at it with our bare hands and then feel the goop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of people who are very smart in this movie who are doing things that are kind of dumb. And
oh my God.
Having now been living through a pandemic, which this movie oddly mirrors the behavior that you're supposed to exhibit to like keep yourself alive. I would say I'm not a big fan of, I'm definitely, if they're like, hey, social distance yourself 6 feet away. If I can get 15 feet, rock and roll, man. I am not like touching things. Like the moment I walk inside, even if I've just been in my own yard, the clothes come off, the hands are washed, like I don't let the kids touch me, until I've changed my clothes. So the idea that this very, very smart graduate student who's getting a PhD in whatever the fuck she's getting, some kind of weird mathematical thing that only quarks can understand, she's like, hey, let me touch this.
She studies behavior patterns.
Yeah, exactly. Let me touch this goop with the guy who built the engineering system that filters the water. Like, he's going to touch that. Come on.
Yeah, I think that's one of my gripes about this movie is that people exhibit like stupid behavior even by this movie's standards. Like they're using gloves but they're not covering their face, even though they're like sticking their face right where there's something that's like a parasite or like something that could literally jump into their mouth or their eyes, or you find out later that they all have cuts, so that puts them in danger.
Yeah. Yeah, but they know how to like
understand.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
I was just gonna say I could understand at first if they. I mean, still, you could argue that they shouldn't be touching anything that they don't know what it is. But I could kind of understand at first if you don't think it's a parasite, kind of being a little more, loose or careless about, covering up or having gloves on. But it is very strange that as the film progresses and it's very clear that it's a parasite, why you wouldn't be wearing masks or why you wouldn't be wearing goggles or gloves or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to explore that, I guess you could have, I don't know, I guess you could come up with some kind of explanation as to like why they don't have gear or enough gear or something. But yeah, they definitely should have done that.
And people in this movie to me seem weirdly unparanoid like about the situation, especially as people start getting infected and dropping dead. They still seem remarkably cavalier about the whole thing. And I know that in life people can be like that, but also to me it just seems like a normal person would freak out to some degree. Like when I was watching this, I kept thinking a lot of The Thing, and like it's a similar situation.
Yeah.
Like people are infected, you don't know who's infected. In The Thing, they developed this like really smart test where they like heat the blood, and in this they're like, okay, we can see it in people's eyes. Let's look in their eye, but like there's no reason to think that that would A, be a conclusive test, and B, it's immediately the next scene like proven wrong. Because like the woman was infected and she looked in her eye and didn't see it, and then it turned out she was infected. So
exactly.
Yeah, so there's okay. I was going to say that there are some things that don't quite add up in the annals of like what's smart in a horror movie, and I would like to see a horror movie. To your point, Evan, what I like so much about The Thing is everybody gets paranoid instantly. Once they realize what's going on, they're like, Gee! And I would have liked to have seen even the asshole captain in this movie been like, I'm not sure I'm on board, but I'm going to go with you on this one just because there's weird shit. Like people's eyes shouldn't explode, And so, and then everyone's doing the right thing and they all still die. So nothing. See, that would be better because then it's like, it doesn't matter what you do. You can be stupid or smart and the parasite's still a parasite. Fuck you.
Very true. All very true. The one thing I will say though that that this film Sea Fever reminded me of was it reminded me a lot of Alien and how Ripley is the only one who's trying to push for quarantine right away. right from the start,
Yeah.
and no one will listen to her, and everyone goes against her. And this very much reminded me of that, where Siobhan is trying to get people to change course, trying to get people to do things, trying to get people to take this seriously, and everyone's like, no, it's fine, it's going to be fine. And so I do think that, and especially as we are living through a fucking pandemic, and there are plenty of people who are not adhering to the rules they should be, even though they should know what's happening. I kind of gave this more of a pass in that way. I think because there is kind of some people have this thing where they don't believe it's really as serious or severe as what's actually happening. So to me, it kind of made sense that it's a little strange that more people weren't paranoid, but it did kind of make sense to me that not everyone was like, oh shit's going down, we got to take this seriously. So definitely a little more realistic.
I did appreciate that the other character, who was also like a scientist, took it very seriously.
Yes.
There was, she at least had an ally, and that's what was his name? Omid. Yeah.
Omid. Yeah.
I think he was Syrian.
Yeah. Well, he was Irish, but he had an Irish accent, but his family must be from Syria, because he also went to school in Syria.
Right.
Because there's a whole conversation about where he met his wife, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So another thing here's the thing, like I'm critiquing the movie, I'm saying stuff about it, but for the most part I liked it. I think I really liked the cinematography in this movie. Just some really vibrant colors, like the greens and the blues, especially for being a movie that's set on the ocean. I think they just absolutely nailed that.
Yeah. I want to break in here real quick, because to your point, at first I was like, why is the slime so bright? It looks so corny, but then everything else in the movie is so dark. It had to be bright so you could fucking see it. So the audience could see it. It must have been like hey, we're shooting below deck on a boat. We should have this thing be really bright and translucent and bioluminescent.
It also feeds slightly into the sci-fi element, because yes, of course, bioluminescence is not necessarily, strange or alien, but the way the goo is this translucent turquoise is unique. And so I think it also stood out.
Definitely
not
weird.
only yes, it's weird, but also it fits into this gorgeous visual, color palette that pops. So it works on both levels.
Yeah, I was also noticing the alien parallels as well. But I think for me, what really bothered me was the ending. So we have a situation where the woman who owns the boat gets off and is like, I'm going to get in a rowboat and see if I can find someone. And we don't know whether she's infected, but we can have a reasonable assumption that she might be. And it's Siobhan and Omid gets tossed into the water, and the creature has him, and Siobhan jumps in and saves him. And then she comes out and realizes, oh crap, I've been infected. So she's like, well, I'm going to sacrifice my life. And so she jumps back into the water and swims into the creature. And to a degree, I get doing that, because she's a scientist. She's like, well, clearly I got to sacrifice myself. But to me, what feels dumb about that is we have two other people that are going to go back into society, and we really don't know if they're also infected. So for you to kill yourself feels like kind of an empty sacrifice when you have someone in a rowboat. You don't know whether they're infected, and you're really not even sure that Omid isn't it's possible he was infected in some other way. So to me, that just bothered me. That it's well, I mean, yes, it kind of makes sense, but is it kind of an empty sacrifice if you have two other people that are possibly going out and infecting the rest of the population?
Yeah. Well, not an empty sacrifice to her, I guess. But
right.
But I do see your point with that. I do remember when she's like, I'm infected. And I was like, oh, she's infected. I didn't really have anything clever to say.
Yeah.
And then when she's like, I got to jump in the water. I was like, you got to jump in the water? What the fuck are you talking about, lady?
I
I
know.
I definitely had that moment. So, but I also remembered there are all of those moments they keep going back to with what turns out to be her shoes upside down, in the water, and you're like, oh, this is foreshadowing. So she did jump in and blah, blah, blah. You should have taken the shoes off, by the way, because it would have been easier to swim without them. Just, as somebody who spent a lot of time in the water. But yeah, overall, yeah, this is kind of like one of those things where you can nitpick, to use a word we've used before on this show. But I feel like when you're nitpicking this kind of stuff, it's because it's kind of effective in a way, and it's just you're just like,
yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's like an interesting story, and it gets you thinking. And so then, yeah, you start thinking too much about how it does or does not follow rules, or does or does not add up in the context of the movie, which I think it's a really good premise. I like that it's kind of tightly focused. It's on a boat. It's this one crew. It's this one situation that is really great about it. Yeah, I like that she's a marine biologist and that there's an element to science in this, especially in the kind of like deduction, problem solving, observation piece, which goes throughout, which I also very much enjoyed. Like even down to her portable microscope that she's got on the boat.
Yeah. So it's funny. I want to go back a moment because I didn't respond, Evan, to what you were saying about how it was an empty sacrifice. I actually don't think it was an empty sacrifice. I actually think it made perfect sense that, yes, there's a very good chance that Freya is infected, very good chance that Omid is as well. But if she dies and her eyeballs explode in that very, very tightly, compacted space, it's very likely, it's almost a guarantee she's going to infect him. So to me, it actually made perfect sense that she sacrificed herself, and I didn't think it was empty, but I can totally see why it felt that way. I was frustrated that she died, only because I always want at least one woman to make it to the end. But yeah. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, actually there's two other things. One of them is, and I know we briefly touched on this before, but I love the conversation that Siobhan and Freya have about quarantining, and how Freya's like, we got to get the fuck back to shore. We're getting off. And Siobhan's like, no. We've got to quarantine for 36 hours in case we're infected. And I know, we talked about that it feels so, timely and prescient, dealing with coronavirus, but good God, that conversation was so frustrating to watch, because it's like, lady, you're gonna kill thousands of people, just because you want to get off this boat. Like it was so frustrating, but frustrating in the best possible way. Like I loved that conversation was happening. And then the other thing I absolutely loved was, I love the conversation that Siobhan has, and I think she has it with Omid, if I remember correctly. And when they're dealing with the creature, like they're still on the boat, they're not on the lifeboat, and he says that they should kill it, and she says they should release it back into the wild, and she's defending its right to exist, and he's gobsmacked that she would risk sacrificing herself to save something that's trying to kill her. And I love that, because not only is that's such a pro-environmental message, and the director Nisa Hardiman has said that this was very clearly, this film was an environmental metaphor that she intentionally did. And I also love that it's such an animal rights message too. Like we don't have to just kill something. Like, they invaded the, creature's territory and its space. They were not supposed to be there. And I love that is at least discussed and touched upon in this film. So yeah, so thematically it worked for me. And yeah, actually everything pretty much worked for me in this film.
I did like that moment as well, when she decides that that they're going to try and save it.
Yeah.
That was unexpected in a good way.
Yeah, because it's not like it's actually trying to kill them. It's just trying to survive, which, is kind of reframing of that, paradigm, which I like.
Yeah, which is the same thing the coronavirus is trying to do. It's not trying to kill us.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a little bit of a different situation because, one's a parasite and one's a virus. Fine. But I didn't really think, honestly, about the environmental message too much. What I just appreciated was the fact that it took science seriously. And then, like you, Megan, the whole to quarantine or not to quarantine conversation that Connie Nielsen and Hermione, what's-her-name, had, Siobhan, I was just like, wow. I mean, this conversation is playing out in living rooms across the world right now.
Sure is.
So.
Yeah. And I personally thought that there was a middle ground between, because there's that point where the kid is sick and he's dying, and they were like, well, we have to go back. We have to get him help. And their options are like, oh, we quarantine, or we just get off the boat normally. And I feel like the middle ground was, if their radio was working, which unfortunately it was not, they could have called for help and actually gotten someone who knew what they were doing and said, like, we have this crazy infectious disease. We need someone to come in here. And then they could have someone come in and quarantine them, like actually come in with the right equipment and get them off the boat without infecting other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But they didn't do that because the radio was broken. So.
Oh, shucks.
Oh, well. Yeah. Well, does anybody else have anything they want to add about sea fever? Oh, I did want to add something, actually. Sea fever, basically means when you go crazy on a boat, which I had never heard that phrase before. So, but the reason you go crazy on a boat is not because you have a parasite. It's just because you go crazy on a boat. So.
For lack of sleep, they were saying in the movie.
Right. It's lack of sleep. Right. Yeah. Which is like, I love, and that, that's such a quick scene and a small thing, but that has, again, to drive home the point about the science and taking science seriously, even though of course it is playing, loose with certain science elements. But yeah, I love that because yes, lack of sleep will make you do, strange things and make you make mistakes, and psychosis can be linked to it. So yes, I love that was actually discussed in the film, that it's not some weird mystical thing causing the quote sea fever,
right.
And which, because they're talking about the bad omens with the red hair, and they're talking about the good omens with the whales, and Freya is talking about the fairies, and that's what, and she has one of the fairies, Niamh, on the bow of the ship. And yeah, and I love that there's kind of these mystical elements and omens, but also like some hard science too, and scientists, and yes,
yeah,
I loved this. I thought this was great. I thought it was tense. I thought it was interesting and engaging, and dealing with some fantastic questions and themes that are incredibly and eerily relevant now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought this was great. I loved it.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it, especially for people who are like, oh, how scary could it be? Well, buckle in, motherfucker. So
exploding, bleeding eyeballs.
Yeah, I mean,
and worms, like little slivers of worms swimming across eyes, and in a shower. Oh God.
Yeah.
All right.
Gross.
So
there's some gross stuff in there
for totes.
Yeah, I know. There is.
Well, let's recap, everybody. Megan, would you say see the true story of the Kelly gang, or would you say take a pass? Ooh, it's a poser. Ooh.
Yeah, it is, because there are some really I'm gonna say see it because Essie Davis is so amazing, and the kid who plays young Ned is outstanding. So yes, and there's great score in it. So I would say see it for those reasons.
I'm gonna say take a big pass on the Whistlers, but you guys, I don't know.
I would say pass on the Whistlers.
I liked it, and I would still say pass.
Oh!
Oh my God, that should be on the poster. I liked it, but don't see it.
Wow.
If you're crazy enough to see it, you can find it in the Somerville Theater's virtual screening room.
Yeah. And then it sounds like a big thumbs up, to borrow a trademarked thing from Siskel and Ebert, for Sea Fever.
Yes.
We're all on board, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Oh, on board. How fitting.
Hey. Yep. It wouldn't be me without making some kind of corny joke. Oh, I got a great corny joke that I remembered that I first heard when I was like 14 years old. But the thing is, you got to like make a face like Milton Berle after you tell this joke, and it goes like this. So imagine Milton Berle is telling this joke. It's like, went golfing this morning, hit 2 beautiful balls, stepped on a rake. Okay.
Oh my God, that was awful.
Yeah, that's why you got to do
you
the Milton Berle thing.
You warned us. You warned us that it was awful.
Okay, so that is, I think, it for this week on Spoiler Piece Theater. We want to say thanks for tuning in. It's not a radio show. Thank you for downloading us or streaming us wherever you do. And speaking of downloading us and streaming us, you can find the show in all kinds of places: your Spotify's, your Apple's, your blah-bitty-blahs. So just look for it anywhere you find a podcast. If you want to get in touch with us for any reason, we love that, by the way. You can email us. You can email us spoilerpiece@gmail.com. You can DM us on the tweets, which is at on the tweets. Anyway, we're at Spoilerpiece. We're also at Spoilerpiece on Instagram, and we have a website, spoilerpiece.com. The hosting site is spoilerpiece.libsyn.com. Mm-hmm. And if you're feeling very, very spunky and you don't have much to do because you're stuck inside because, there's a virus, you can give us a call.
At 862-21-PEACE.
And you can leave us a message, and you can talk about Sea Fever or the Whistlers or the Kelly Gang or whatever you want to do, and we would happily play your message on the show. Mm-hmm. I love it when messages come in. So anyway, I think I have not forgotten anything except for the Patreon. This week, our Patreon segment is about Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. We're kind of doing this thing lately where we talk about We talk about film series and we pick one film, out of a series. Last week we talked about how crappy Star Trek V was. This week I was like, let's talk about Ghost Protocol because it's great. And I'm not going to tell you what I thought of it when I saw it again. But anyway, if you go to patreon.com/spoilerpiece, you can sign up for the Patreon. For $5 a month, you get the exclusive audio. You get to vote in polls. If you give us $10 a month, then you get to tell us what we can watch. Which is, we've had some good choices in there, by the way. So please do that. And thank you very much for doing it, patrons. My name is Dave Riedel. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and I'm co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and you can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The OpinionS.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.